Hare Krishna, welcome everyone to our Gita class. Let's start with the prayers. Om Ajnanatimidandhasya Jnananjanashalakaya Chakshurunmilitam Yena Tasmai Shri Gurave Namaha Shri Chaitanya Manobhishtam Sthapitam Yena Bhutale Swayam Rupa Kadamahyam Dadati Swapadantikam Vandeham Shri Guru Shri Juta Padakamalam Shri Gurun Vaishnavamscha Shri Rupam Sagrajatam Sahagana Raghunathanvitam Tam Sajivam Sadvaitam Savadhutam Parijana Sahitam Krishna Chaitanya Devam Shri Radha Krishna Padan Sahagana Lalita Shri Vishakhan Vitamscham Namam Vishnu Padaya Krishna Presthaya Bhutale Srimate Bhakti Vedanta Swami Niti Namini Namaste Saraswate Deve Gauravani Pracharini Nirvishesha Shunyavadi Paschat Desha Vanchakalpatarubhyascha Kripa Sindhubhya Evacha Patitanam Pavanebhyo Vaishnavebhyo Namo Namah Namo Mahavadanyaya Krishna Prema Pradayate Krishnaya Krishna Chaitanya Namne Gauratvishe Namaha Panchatattvatmakam Krishnam Bhaktarupa Swarupakam Bhaktavataram Bhaktakyam Namami Bhakta Shaktikam He Krishna Karuna Sindho Deenabandho Jagatpate गोपेश गोपिकान्त राधाकान्त नमोस्तुते तप्तकाञ्चन गौराङ्गी राधे वृन्दावनेश्वरी वृषभानुसुते देवी प्रणमामि हरिप्रिये नीलाचल निवासाय नित्याय परमात्मने बलभद्र सुभद्राभ्यां जगन्नाथाय ते नमः जय श्री कृष्ण चैतन्य प्रभु नित्यानंद श्री अद्वैत गदाधर शिवासादि गौर भक्त वृंद हरे कृष्णा कृष्ण कृष्ण हरे 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 राम 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 हरे हरे. Hare Krishna. So we are continuing the 8th chapter of Bhagavad Gita. We covered till verse number 8, where we saw that Lord is answering the questions by Arjuna. So the 8th chapter starts with Arjuna's question. In the 7th chapter, last part of the 7th chapter, the Supreme Lord introduced some terminologies which Arjuna could not understand. And that forms the basis of this 8th chapter. So let's review those verses from 7th chapter, 7.29 and 30. 7.29 says, Jara Marana Mokshaya Mama Shritya Yatanti Ye Te Brahma Tadvidu Krishnam Adhyattam Karma Chakhilam. So here Arjuna asks the meaning of Brahma, Adhyatma and Karma. And in the next verse, Sadi Bhutadi Daivam Mam Sadi Yagyam Cha Ye Vidu Priyanakale Apichamam Te Viduryukta Chetasam. What is Adi Bhuta? What is Adi Daiva? What is Adi Yagya? How Adi Yagya is there inside the body, and how Prayanakale Apichamam Te Viduryukta Chetasa. How can someone remember Krishna at the time of death? So these are different questions of Arjuna, which are being answered in the beginning of the 8th chapter. So in the first few verses, the Supreme Lord says, so the first verse is Arjuna's inquiry about all this. What is Brahman? What is self? Means what is Adhyatma and what is Karma? What is this material manifestation? Adibhuta. What are the demigods? It's Adhideva. And then Adhiyagya. How Adhiyagya is placed inside the body and how someone can remember Krishna at the time of death. The Supreme Lord answers that Brahma means the eternal spirit soul, or Jiva is called Brahma. Adhyatma is the eternal nature of the spirit soul, which is serving Krishna, having an eternal relationship with the Supreme Lord. Karma means the law of karma, the fruity baggage carried by the living entity in different lifetimes. Adibhuta means the entire material manifestation. That is answered in verse number 4. Adibhutam ksharo bhava. All the embodied beings in the material world, the physical nature, the material world itself, which is constantly changing. So the material world, along with all the living entities in the material world, is called Adhibhuta. Adhideva is the collection of all the demigods, and the Vishwarup, or the universal form of the Lord, is called Adhideva. And Adhiyagya is Paramatma, the Supreme Lord, who is there inside the body, inside the heart of every living entity. And the last question is very, very important. Prayanakal api chamam te vidur yukta chetasha. How can someone remember Krishna at the time of death? Before answering this question, Krishna says that what is the benefit of remembering Krishna at the time of death? And what will happen if you do not remember Krishna at the time of death? So verse number 5 says, Antakale cha mameva smaran muktva kalevaram japrayati madbhavam yati nastatra samshaya. If you can remember Krishna at the time of death, yati nasti atra samshaya, there is no doubt that such a person will madbhavam japrayati madbhavam yati. Such a person who remembers Krishna at the time of death will definitely attain the abode of the Supreme Lord, which is very rare to attain, and all the transcendentalists, they do austerity and penances for millions of lifetimes for getting the eternal abode of the Supreme Lord. And that abode is easily accessible by a person who can remember Krishna at the time of death. So this is the benefit you are getting. And what will happen if we do not remember Krishna at the time of death? Yam yam vapi smaran bhavam tejatyanti kalevaram tam tamevaiti kvante sadatat bhava bhavita. If we do not remember Krishna, definitely we will remember something of this material world, something related to the illusory energy or Maya of the Supreme Lord. There is only two things, either Krishna or Maya. If we are not choosing Krishna, we will definitely choose Maya. Any activity can be classified into two categories. Either it is Krishna conscious or it is Maya conscious. So by default, if some activity is not Krishna conscious, it is Maya conscious. And whenever we do something Maya conscious, we have to suffer for that. So if we do not remember Krishna at the time of death, we will remember something of this material world, and we have to come back again into this material world, and all the problems of the material world we have to experience again and again. Birth, old age, disease, death, adi atmic klesh, miseries due to one's own body and mind. Adi bhautik klesh, miseries due to the other living entities. Adi daivik klesh, miseries due to the natural calamities. All these problems of material world, three tap klesh, we have to experience. So that is the importance of remembering Krishna at the time of death. And if we do not remember Krishna, again we have to come back to this material world, and we have to suffer again and again in this endless cycle. So now Krishna answers, how can one remember Krishna at the time of death? Tashmat sarveshu kaleshu mamanushmara yuddhacha. Practice doing this, that sarveshu kaleshu, your whole lifetime you practice doing this, that do your karma, whatever prescribed duty you are doing. Just like Arjuna's prescribed duty was fighting because he was a Kshatriya. So we all have different prescribed duties. Do that, do your material duties, and practice remembering Krishna along with that throughout your life. If you can practice that, in the verse number 8 again, Krishna speaks about this practice, Abhyas Yoga Yuktena. Abhyas means practice. If you can practice doing this, and how to remember Krishna, how to chant Krishna's names, along with doing my material duties, if you keep on doing this practice throughout your life, then you will be able to remember Krishna at the time of death. And then certainly you will attain Krishna's abode. So that is the method Krishna is prescribing. So we completed this section where Lord answered all the questions of Arjuna coming from the 7th chapter. Now Krishna spoke elaborately about the importance of remembering Krishna at the time of death and the process of remembering Krishna at the time of death. Now we are entering the next section, 9 to 13, which says remembering Krishna by Yoga Mishra Bhakti and attaining Brahman. So now remembrance of the Supreme Lord Krishna is talking about. What are the pros and cons? Like, what are the cons if you do not remember Krishna at the time of death? So all those things and the process of remembering Krishna is described. Now there are two ways in which we can remember Krishna. One is by pure bhakti, that will come later, 14 to 16. And another is by Yoga Mishra Bhakti. Yoga means Ashtanga Yoga. So some Ashtanga Yogi and little bit of bhakti also they developed. So that is called Yoga Mishra Bhakti. So such bhakti leads to Brahman. And if you remember Krishna by pure bhakti, you will attain the dham or abode of the Supreme Lord. So first Krishna describes remembering Krishna by Yoga Mishra Bhakti and thus attaining Brahman. So let's see. Yeah. Kavim Puranam Anusasitaram Anoraniyam Samanusmaredyam Sarvasya Dhataram Achintya Rupam Aditya Varnam Tamasha Parastat. One should meditate upon the Supreme Person as the one who knows everything, as he who is the oldest, who is the controller, who is the smaller than the smallest, who is the maintainer of everything, who is beyond all material conception, who is inconceivable, who is always a person. He is luminous like the sun, and he is transcendental beyond this material nature. So, in this verse, all the different qualities of the Supreme Lord is mentioned. So, one should meditate upon the Supreme Person by remembering all these qualities of the Supreme Lord. And this is this meditation or dhyan we discussed in the chapter 6, which is Dhyana Yoga or Ashtanga Yoga. So, Ashtanga Yoga is mind and sense control and meditation. There are 8 limbs of Ashtanga Yoga we discussed: Yama, Niyama, Asana, Pranayam, Pratyahar, Dharana, Dhyana, Samadhi. So, there are 3 stages of meditation: Dharana, Dhyan, Samadhi. So, Ashtanga Yoga is majorly related to meditation. Therefore, it is also called Dhyana Yoga. So, one should meditate upon the Supreme Lord by focusing on these qualities. So, that is Ashtanga Yoga. So, by doing this Ashtanga Yoga, we'll be able to get liberated from this material world by remembering Krishna. But again, in the 6th chapter, we saw that when Krishna explained this Ashtanga Yoga, Arjuna told, "This is all good, but I cannot perform because it is too difficult for me." Then Krishna told, "Okay, no problem, practice Bhakti Yoga." So, Krishna is again telling the different ways of remembering. Although Krishna prefers the next section 14 to 16, remembering Krishna by pure devotional service. But again, Krishna, for giving the context, is explaining Ashtanga Yoga also. So, all the different qualities are mentioned. So, here, Srila Prabhupada says, explains all these different qualities, and we cannot comprehend even this material world, which is insignificant compared to the spiritual world. So, how can we comprehend what is beyond? Achintya means that which is beyond this material world, that which our argument, logic, philosophical speculation cannot touch, and which is inconceivable. Therefore, intelligent persons, avoiding useless argument and speculation, should accept what is stated in the scriptures like Vedas, like Bhagavad Gita and Srimad Bhagavatam, and follow the principles they set down. This will lead one to understanding. So, by meditating on the Supreme Lord and following the prescriptions of the Supreme Lord in Bhagavad Gita and Srimad Bhagavatam, the spiritual world will be revealed. It's not that by our intelligence, by our calculation, physics, chemistry, mathematics, all these modern sciences, we can discover the spiritual world. That is not possible because this is not something to be discovered by our senses and scientific advancements. The Supreme Lord is beyond the jurisdiction of all this gross matter. And whatever we are studying in science, whatever we are experiencing through our senses, that is only gross matter. But the Supreme Lord and his abode, the spirit soul, all these are spiritual subject matters. They are made up of Satchit Ananda. They are not made up of this earth, water, fire, air, ether, so that we can see and experience with our different senses. So, by senses, we cannot experience. The Supreme Lord and his abode is to be revealed. And that only happens if you follow the prescriptions of the Supreme Lord. Okay, next verse, verse number 10. प्रयाणकाले मनसा चलेन भक्त्या युक्तो योगबलेन चैव भ्रूवरमध्ये प्राणमवेश्य सम्यक् स तं परं पुरुषमुपायति दिव्यम्. One who at the time of death fixes his life here between the eyebrows and by the strength of yoga with an undeviating mind engages himself in remembering the Supreme Lord in full devotion will certainly attain to the Supreme Personality of Godhead. So devotion is also required. Without devotion, only Ashtanga Yoga, by only Ashtanga Yoga, you will not be able to reach the abode of the Supreme Lord. So devotion is required. Without devotion, Ashtanga Yoga will not work. But here, the yogi has little bit of devotion, but then he is also using Ashtanga Yoga. Therefore, it is called Yoga Mishra Bhakti. But in Kali Yuga, no one is qualified to perform this Ashtanga Yoga. So this is stated only for reference. And some exalted personalities, they can follow this process of Ashtanga Yoga. But in Kali Yuga, the prescription is Bhakti Yoga. Yeah, so yes, here also Srila Prabhupada says that the particular use of the word yoga balena is significant in this verse because without practice of yoga, whether Sat Chakra Yoga or Bhakti Yoga, Sat Chakra Yoga means Ashtanga Yoga, where all the different chakras of the body are activated. One cannot come to this transcendental state of being at the time of death. One cannot suddenly remember the Supreme Lord at death. And uh, this is the essence of the verse 8.7, where Krishna said, Tasmat sarveshu kaleshu ma manushmara. If you think that throughout my life I will deal with Maya, I will deal with material activities, and at the time of death, suddenly I will remember Krishna, that is not possible. If one thinks that I will directly go to the stage and perform a dance, it's not possible. You have to do rehearsal and practice extensively there, and then you can perform well in the stage. So similarly, our whole life is a preparation and death is an examination. So if you and the passing the examination means being able to remember Krishna at the time of death. So if you want to remember Krishna at the time of death, we have to practice this by Ashtanga Yoga or Bhakti Yoga. Even if we are doing Ashtanga Yoga, little bit Bhakti is required. Okay, that we have seen. So, and otherwise you can do with full devotion, completely pure devotional service. So there are two ways, Yoga Mishra Bhakti and pure Bhakti. One must have practiced some yoga system, especially the system of Bhakti Yoga. That is recommended for Kali Yuga. Since one's mind at death is very disturbed, one should practice transcendent through yoga during one's life. So if you do not have practice, it is very difficult to remember Krishna at the time of death. If you are not able to remember Krishna when uh, you are doing well, it is very difficult to remember Krishna during death, because during death all the prana vayu and all the different factors which will be very much disturbing and excruciating pain will be there. So in that difficult situation, to remember Krishna, it requires a lot of practice. Therefore, devotees chant every day, and by chanting, they practice the remembrance of Krishna in all situations. So, verse number 11, Yadaksharam Veda Vido Vadanti Vishanti Yadniyatayo Vitaraga Yadichanto Brahmacharyam Charanti Tatte Padam Sangrahena Pravakshem. Persons who were learned in the Vedas, who utter Omkar, and who are great sages in the renounced order, enter into Brahman. Desiring such perfection, one practice celibacy. I shall now briefly explain to you this process by which one may attain salvation. So, a person, this Omkar is non different than Hare Krishna Mahamantra. Here also, we can see that therefore Lord Chaitanya has announced, according to the spiritual injunctions for this age of Kali, that in this age no process of realizing the Supreme is possible except chanting of the holy names of Lord Krishna, Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. So Om is also, this Om is identical with Brahman. Krishna here explains the impersonal Brahman into which the renounced order of sages enter. So this Omkar is impersonal representation of the Supreme Lord. So if someone is remembering Omkar at the time of death, he will enter impersonal Brahman. Okay. So during the time of death, whatever is the state of your mind, if you are remembering material world, will come back to the material world. If you are remembering the impersonal feature of the Supreme Lord, you will go to the Brahma Jyoti. If you are remembering the personal feature of the Supreme Lord, Krishna in Golok Vrindavan, you will go to Krishna in Golok Vrindavan. If you are remembering about Lord Ram, you will go to Ayodhya Dham. If you are remembering about Lord Jagannath, you will go to Jagannath Puri. So, at the time of death, whatever you remember, that state you will attain without any fail. This is called the law of last wish. So, so therefore, that moment is very crucial, and the whole lifetime is a preparation so that we can remember right thing at the time of death. So generally, this renounced order, the sannyasis, they enter into Brahman. They are generally the worshippers of the impersonal Brahman. So in this verse, the impersonalists are mentioned that if they are worshipping and meditating on the impersonal feature of the Supreme Lord at the time of death, they will remember that and they will enter Brahmajyoti or Brahman. सर्वद्वाराणि संयम्य मनोहृदि निरुध्य च मूर्धन्यध्यात्मना प्राणम् अस्थितो yogadharanam. The yogic situation is that of detachment from all sensual engagements, closing all the doors of senses and fixing the mind on the heart and the life fear at the top of head. One establishes himself in yoga. This is again in Ashtanga Yoga. In Ashtanga Yoga there are different limbs of Ashtanga Yoga, and this particular limb of closing all the doors of the senses and fixing the mind on the heart, withdrawing the senses from the sensory objects, detachment from all sensual engagements. So this is called Pratyahar stage of Ashtanga Yoga. Yam, Niyam, Asana, Pranayam, Pratyahar. And then your meditation becomes stronger. Dharana, Dhyan, Samadhi. So this is again speaking about Ashtanga Yoga. So if you are practicing this Ashtanga Yoga throughout your life, at the time of death, you will remember Paramatma and you will get liberated. And a little bit of devotion is also required. With that, you will be able to attain the eternal abode of the Supreme Lord. But again, this process is impractical for this age of Kali. Om ityakshare ram brahma व्याहरन् मम अनुस्मरन् यप्रयाति त्यजन् देहं शयाति paramam gatim. After being situated in the yoga practice and vibrating the sacred syllable Om, the supreme combination of letters, if one thinks of the Supreme Personality of Godhead and quits his body, he will certainly reach the spiritual planets. So this Om is a very special syllable, and this is the sometimes it is told the sound incarnation of Krishna also. So Om refers to A-U-M, A-U-M. So these are basically A represents Krishna, U represents the energy of Krishna, and Ma represents the living entities. So Radha Krishna along with the living entities are represented by this Om. And Om is not different from Hare Krishna Mahamantra. It is clearly stated here that Om, Brahman, and Lord Krishna are non-different. The impersonal sound of Krishna is Om, but the sound Hare Krishna contains Om. The chanting of the Hare Krishna mantra is clearly recommended for this age. So if one quits his body at the end of life chanting Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Ram Ram, Hare Hare, he certainly reaches one of these spiritual planets. So if someone is remembering the personal feature of Krishna at the time of death, he will attain the personal planets like Golok Vrindavan, Vaikuntha, Ayodhya, Jagannath Puri, Shwetadip, like that. If someone is remembering the impersonal feature of the Supreme Lord, he will attain Brahmajyoti. Okay. The devotees of Krishna enter the Krishna planet or Golok Vrindavan. For the personalized, there are also innumerable other planets like Vaikuntha in the spiritual Kai, whereas the impersonalists remain in Brahmajyoti. So whatever is your aspiration and whatever you are remembering, whatever feature of the Supreme Lord, either impersonal or personal, accordingly your destination will be decided. So this is Yoga Mishra Bhakti, and a Yoga Mishra Bhakti yogi can attain different destinations according to the mood and according to what aspects of the Supreme Lord is remembering at the time of death. Now Krishna explains what happens for a Bhakti yogi who remembers Krishna at the time of death with pure Bhakti yoga. The verse number 14 says, Ananya cheta satatam yomam smarati nityasha tasyaham sulabha partha nityayuktasya yoginaha. But sulabha is very, very crucial here. For one who always remembers me without deviation, I am easy to obtain, O son of Pritha, because of this constant engagement in devotional service. So if you are approaching me through devotional service, it is very easy to attain me. The previous way that I explained, that is comparatively difficult. But this way, remembering Krishna by pure devotional service, this is the prescribed way in this Kali Yuga. And this is very, in this process, attaining Krishna is very easy. Tasyaham sulabha partha. Okay. This verse especially describes the final destination attained by the unalloyed devotees who serve the Supreme Personality of Godhead in Bhakti Yoga. Previous verses have mentioned four different kinds of devotees: the distressed, inquisitive, those who seek material gain, and the speculative philosophers. So this is explained in the 7th chapter. Artha Yigyasur Artharthi Jnani Cha Bharatarsava. They come to the Supreme Lord. Artha. Some people come to the Supreme Lord when they are distressed by some material problem. Some come due to inquisitiveness. Some are coming due to some material gain, artharthi, for gaining money or gaining some material facilities. And the speculative philosophers who know, who has read the Vedas and understood the nature of the Supreme Lord. Different processes of liberation have also been described: Karma Yoga, Jnana Yoga, Hatha Yoga. The principles of this yoga system have some bhakti added. But in this verse particularly mentions pure Bhakti Yoga. So there are different processes like Karma Yoga, Jnana Yoga, Hatha Yoga or Ashtanga Yoga. And if you add Bhakti, it is called Jnana Mishra Bhakti, Karma Mishra Bhakti, Yoga Mishra Bhakti. So there are different ways. Without Bhakti, these processes will not work. So you can adopt these processes, but little bit of devotion is also required. So you can follow Karma Mishra Bhakti. You can do Jnana Mishra Bhakti. You can do Yoga Mishra Bhakti. But if you do pure Bhakti, then all the benefits of these processes are already covered. You need not do any other Karma, Jnana or Yoga. Karma, Jnana and Yoga needs the help of Bhakti for success. But if you are doing pure Bhakti, you are independent. You do not need the assistance of Karma, Jnana, Yoga. So that is the beauty of Bhakti Yoga. The principles of this yoga system have some bhakti added, but this verse particularly mentions pure Bhakti Yoga without any mixture of Jnana, Karma and Hatha. As indicated by the word Ananya Cheta. Ananya Cheta means pure Bhakti Yoga. The devotee desires nothing but Krishna. A pure devotee does not desire promotion to heavenly planets, nor does he seek oneness with the Brahma Jyoti or salvation or liberation from material entanglement. A pure devotee does not desire anything. In the Chaitanya Charitamrita, the pure devotee is called Niskama, which means he has no desire, no kama, no desire for self-interest. Perfect place belongs to him alone, not to them who strive for personal gain. Whereas a Jnana Yogi, Karma Yogi or Hatha Yogi has his own selfish interests. A perfect devotee has no desire other than to please the Supreme Personality of Godhead. Therefore, the Lord says, for anyone who is unflinchingly devoted to him, he is easy to attain. A pure devotee always engages in devotional service to Krishna in one of his various personal features, like different avatars like Ram, Nrsimha, Varaha, Vishnu, Krishna. So, pure devotee can engage in Lord's devotional service in any of the forms. Krishna has various plenary expansions and incarnations such as Rama and Nrsimha, and a devotee can choose to fix his mind in loving service to any of these transcendental forms of the Supreme Lord. Such a devotee meets with none of the problems that plague the practitioners of other yogas. Bhakti yoga is very simple and pure and easy to perform. One can begin simply by chanting Hare Krishna. That is the starting point of Bhakti yoga. If one is starting to chant Hare Krishna, Bhakti yoga process is already started for him. The Lord is merciful to all, but as we have already explained, he is especially inclined towards those who always serve him without deviation. So the Supreme Lord's mercy flows in greater extent to the Bhakti yogis. In general, the Lord is merciful towards all, but towards a Bhakti yogi, the Lord is especially inclined. So some people say this is partiality of the Lord. The Lord is favoring those who are practicing Bhakti yoga, and like favoring less to other people. It's not exactly like that, that the Supreme Lord is partial. But what happens? Suppose um, suppose it is raining, and if I am inside the house, then I will not be able to see the rain. But if I come out, I'll be able to see rain. So rain is everywhere. Similarly, sunlight is everywhere. If I am there inside a closed room, I cannot experience sunlight. So similarly, Lord's mercy is there, but if we take up the process of Bhakti Yoga, we completely expose ourselves to the mercy of the Supreme Lord, and therefore we can receive more. If we follow some other paths, or if we become atheist, then we are like in a closed room. Then how can we experience sunlight? The Supreme Lord is ready to give us mercy. But to accept the mercy of the Supreme Lord completely, we have to adopt the process of Bhakti Yoga. So that's the explanation. The Supreme Lord is not partial, but we have to make us qualified enough to receive the mercy of the Supreme Lord. And that happens by starting Bhakti Yoga. Okay, one can simply begin by chanting Hare Krishna. The Lord is merciful to all, but towards Bhakti Yogi, he is especially inclined. The Lord helps such devotees in various ways, as stated in the Vedas. Yam evaisha viranute tena labhyas tasyaiva atma bibranute tanum. One who is fully surrendered and engaged in the devotional service of the Supreme Lord can understand the Supreme Lord as he is. And as stated in Bhagavad Gita, Dadami Buddhi Yogam Tam. To Bhakti Yogi, Krishna personally guides from inside the heart. The Lord gives such a devotee sufficient intelligence so that ultimately the devotee can attain him in his spiritual kingdom. So, a Bhakti Yogi is very intimately connected to the Supreme Lord. And from within the heart, the Supreme Lord gives correct, right inspiration to Bhakti Yogi. So, internally, the Supreme Lord guides as Paramatma, and externally, the Supreme Lord guides by taking up the form of devotees. Suppose I'm going to take a wrong decision, but I'm practicing Bhakti Yoga. So internally, Krishna will try to inspire us towards the correct way. If we are not, if we are not able to identify the inspiration given by Krishna within my heart, then Krishna will inspire other devotees, because Krishna is also present in the hearts of other devotees as Paramatma. So then Krishna will inspire other devotees that go and speak to this devotee and try to make him understand that he is going to commit a mistake. Please rectify the mistake of this devotee. So if we are following the process of Bhakti Yoga, we are under the complete protection of the Supreme Lord. The Supreme Lord will make sure that we will not take any wrong decision, and Supreme Lord will make sure that we do not suffer. So therefore, this is the beauty of Bhakti Yoga. Dadami Buddhi Yogam Tam. The Supreme Lord guides a Bhakti Yogi, because the Bhakti Yogi is completely receptive and is ready to accept whatever the Supreme Lord is trying to instruct the living entity, and is ready to follow the path given by Krishna. The special qualification of a pure devotee is that he is always thinking of Krishna without deviation and without considering the time or place. Everywhere, every time, the pure devotee is thinking of Krishna. There should be no impediments. He should be able to carry out his service anywhere and at any time. Some say that the devotee should remain in holy places like Vrindavan or some holy town where the Lord lived. But a pure devotee can live anywhere, and Srila Prabhupada actually did this. He left Vrindavan and went to preach in the West. But in the West also, Srila Prabhupada was in Vrindavan. Wherever Srila Prabhupada is, he is always thinking of Krishna. Therefore, he is always in Vrindavan. He took the Vrindavan within his heart and established the Vrindavan in West. Therefore, you will see in the West also, Srila Prabhupada established different places like Los Angeles is New Dwarka. He took Dwarka out of India. West Virginia is New Vrindavan. So like that, the different dhams are established. And the ISKCON temples where the Supreme Lord's worship is going on, chanting of the holy names is going on, it is non different from a dham. And scriptures say that. Krishna himself says to Narada Muni, Naham Vasami Vaikunthe Yogina Mridaye Shubha Jatra Gayanti Madhakta Tatra Tishthami Narada. Wherever my devotees are singing my glories, I stay there. So all the ISKCON temples all over the world, they are some dham, and therefore Srila Prabhupada uh, named those places like New Dwarka, New Vrindavan, and all. So the pure devotee carries Vrindavan within the heart and establishes Vrindavan everywhere. And Srila Prabhupada actually did that. And create the atmosphere of Vrindavan by his devotional service. It was Advaita Acharya, who told Lord Chaitanya, wherever you are, O Lord, there is Vrindavan. As indicated by the words Satatam and Nityasha, which means always, regularly, or every day, a pure devotee constantly remembers Krishna and meditates upon him. These are qualifications of a pure devotee for whom the Lord is most easily attainable. Bhakti Yoga is the system that the Gita recommends above all others. Generally, the Bhakti Yogis are engaged in 5 different ways. Santa Bhakta. There are different rasas in which Bhakti Yogis serve Krishna. Santa Bhakta. Engaged in devotional service in neutrality, like the trees, cows, and birds of Vrindavan, in the way they are serving Krishna. Dasya Bhakta. Engaged in devotional service as servant, just like Hanuman is serving Lord Ram. Sakya Bhakta. Engaged as a friend, like Subal Shaka, Shridham Shaka, and Arjuna, friend of Krishna. And then comes Vatsalya Bhakta, engaged as parent, like Nanda and Yashoda. And Madhurya Bhakta, engaged as conjugal lover of the Supreme Lord, like Srimati Radharani and other gopis. In any of these ways, a pure devotee is always engaged in the transcendental loving service of the Supreme Lord and cannot forget the Supreme Lord. And so for him, the Supreme Lord is easily attained. A pure devotee cannot forget the Supreme Lord for a moment. And similarly, the Supreme Lord cannot forget his pure devotee for a moment. The pure devotee is always remembering Krishna, and Krishna is also remembering the pure devotee. This is the great blessing of Krishna conscious process of chanting the Maha Mantra Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. So if we keep chanting this mantra, Krishna will be always there with us. That is the greatest blessing or greatest benefit we are getting. Now in the next verse, Krishna says, Mamupetya punarjanma dukkhalayama shashvatam napnuvanti mahatmana samsiddhim paramam gatam. After attaining me, the great souls who are yogis in devotion never return to this temporary world, which is full of miseries, because they have attained the highest perfection. So here Mahatma means the great devotees. We elaborately discussed about the nature of the pure devotees in the previous verse. Such devotees are called Mahatma. And what is their destination? After death, they attain Krishna and they do not come back to this material world. Because a Bhakti Yogi is always remembering Krishna throughout his life, at the time of death, undoubtedly he will remember Krishna. And therefore, he will undoubtedly go back to Krishna's abode and will never return to this material world. And this verse number 16 ends this section. We'll cover this section today. And the next section is material and spiritual world that we'll discuss next week. So verse number 16 says, Abrahma bhuvana loka punaravartino arjunam Mamupetya tu kwanteya punarjanma na vidyate. From the highest planet in this material world down to the lowest, all are places of misery wherein repeated birth and death take place. But one who attains to my abode, O son of Kunti, never takes birth again. So in the previous verse, Krishna told that these bhakti yogis or these mahatmas, because they are always remembering Krishna, they will also remember me at the time of death, and therefore they will attain my abode, and they never come back to this material world. And this is a very unique characteristics of pure devotees, because everybody has to come back. A Brahma Bhuvanaloka Punaravartin Arjuna. Everyone, there is no exception. Everyone has to come back to this material world after death in general. But these pure devotees are very special, who are able to remember Krishna at the time of death by pure devotion, and undoubtedly they will come back to Krishna's abode. Yogamishra Bhaktas can also remember Krishna at the time of death, but it is very difficult, and therefore there is some amount of uncertainty that whether you will be able to practice the Ashtanga Yoga perfectly or not. For Kali Yuga people, it is very, the probability is very less that you may mess up something in performing the Ashtanga Yoga, and therefore you may not be liberated. But if you follow this Bhakti Yoga process, then it is sure shot, 100% confirmed without any doubt that at the time of death you'll be able to remember Krishna and you will come back to Krishna, and then you will not have to take another birth in the material world again, and therefore you don't have to suffer again all the problems of this material world. So this is how Krishna explained about different process of remembering Krishna at the time of death, and therefore attaining the supreme. This is the title of the chapter. So to attain the Supreme Lord, we have to remember Krishna at the time of death, and there are different process of remembrance we saw. And now in the next section, Krishna will discuss about material versus spiritual world. The question is why to get liberated? What is the problem staying in this material world? So how that spiritual world is different from this material world? Why should I aspire to go to the spiritual world? What is so special about spiritual world? What are the problems of material world? So those will be explained. And the last section deals with normal people who are not yogis. So for them, the tithis also matter. The day and the time when the living entity is leaving the body, that date and time is very important for deciding the destination. But if someone is a pure devotee, the date and time do not matter. But for other yogis or for normal common people, all these factors matter. When and where they are leaving the body, all this they control the destination of the living entity. But a pure devotee is beyond all these considerations. So wherever and whatever time the pure devotee leaves body, he will certainly attend Golok Vrindavan or Vaikuntha by Lord's mercy. Okay, so we have completed till verse number 16 of this 8th chapter. Any questions till now, whatever we discussed? So I encourage you to go through these verses again and read the purports. Because of less time, we are not able to cover the purports, but the purports are very important. So you should go through them. And if you have any questions, then you can text me in WhatsApp. I will get back to you. Okay, so we'll stop here today and we'll continue again in the next week. Srimad Bhagavad Gita as it is ki jai, Srila Prabhupada ki jai. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Thank you. Hare Krishna.